4 compact premium SUVs in one video with the Audi Q3, the BMW X2, the Mercedes GLA and the Volvo XC40. Not only in exterior, of course also interior with the Q3, the X2, the GLA and the XC40, and driving those SUVs, all 4 here in the big comparison, and we'll deliver you in-depth look at each individual car. Let's start with the Q3. The Audi Q3 is built in Hungary, and this all-new generation has a bigger front grille with the so-called Audi single-frame grille. This is a so-called first edition that also features those dark Audi rings right there. You cannot get them later, at least that's what they say at the moment. This is also the S-Line with a sportier trim here with the bumpers and those air intake graphic because it's all shut off. The lamps, they come with LED standard, but then in different trims, so depending also if you pick the high beam and stuff. Interesting daytime running light, and in the higher LED trims you also have, for example, this cascading turning indicator light. So when you, for example, go left or right, then you also have this right here in the LED daytime running light signature. 4,48 m or 14'7" is the total length of the new Q3. That's about 10 centimeters longer than the predecessor generation. And the rims, they start from 17 inch and go up to 20 inch. That's what we see at the moment. How does that play out for the comfort? We'll see later about that. And there are also 3 different suspensions available. A base suspension, then an adaptive suspension, and today we're testing the sport suspension, which sits a little bit lower and is also stiffer. Let's see about how that plays out in the driving part. You can get also different contrast colors here for the lower part in gray or black. And so you can have a contrast color to the bright one here, for example, in this orange. Soon I'll show you also a color variation. This one also the S-Line exterior with the badge right there. Then also with dark framed windows. You can also get them in chrome. You can soon also take a look how that looks like. And interesting, the same thing that the Q5 is carrying, basically, this dropping line here for the design. You can see it been raised right there, and also in the rear part. And indeed the Q5 carries a similar design element. That's also the reason why they look so much alike now. And finally the rear end, so the car has become a little bit wider if you compare it to the predecessor, and also with a nice daytime running light signature graphic right there. Also a black Q3 logo here in this first edition. It is somewhat, of course, a typical MQB compact car from a Volkswagen Corporation hatch, so they all look somehow similar. But I think the good thing is that you don't lose too much room on the inside. You can already see that here from the outside. And besides our Pulse orange car, let me show you some different colors. This one here, Floret Silver, also with a roof bag, so you can see that it's also possible. And also with chrome frame around the windows as a contrast to our main car that has the dark frames. And my favorite color, Turbo Blue, a really bright blue color. Here in this case with 19-inch rims in a 2-color scheme. Also with chrome frame around the windows. I think it looks a little bit more elegant that way. Of course, the dark frames then would be more aggressive. And you can also see how the Audi rings look like when they are not all black. So I would definitely pick this one out of those 3. Which one would you? And we organized yet another vehicle for you with another color. This is Chronos Gray. Also with 19-inch rims, so a little bit smaller, like the blue one. Not the 20-inch from the orange one. And also this car will be very important later on because this one has the adaptive suspension. So we'll also test that later on in the driving part, where we'll have the sport suspension with the petrol and the diesel here with the adaptive suspension, so we can tell you more about which suspension to pick and also which engine to go for. So with the engines, all come now with the particle filter, and the diesels also with the SCR injection. They're all 4-cylinder engines. So you can see here the transverse mount, and it's also supposed to be in this very MQB platform, the MQB A2 platform, similar with the Volkswagen Tiguan. And yes, the car do share a lot, but also some differences for sure. So on the diesel side, you have the 2-liter TDI with 150 or 190 horsepower. And on the petrol side here, the TFSI, either 1.5 liter with 150 horsepower, or then this one, the 2-liter TFSI with 190, or today the top spec 230 horsepower. The bigger horsepower engines are always connected with the all-wheel drive, so front plus rear on demand. And the entry engines you can also get with front-wheel drive. So this is the car key. Usually you don't need the flip out keyless entry. Here, put your hand on the outside to close it and the inside to open it. Yeah, there we go. Then inside of the doors, there's this Alcantara package in orange, gray or brown. I will soon show you also the different colors. Orange, of course, let's say, will be special. Hard plastics, well, yeah, it's a little bit soft, but no, not really that soft, but also not super hard, something in between. Interesting is that we have the door handle basically in the opposite direction. And when you think about it, opening it like this, it comes actually, let's say, more ergonomic than the other way around. Why not doing it that way? Good quality of the buttons for the window levers there. You could open the trunk right there, and also bigger bottles do fit. Then the new interior, pretty interesting. At the moment you can see the screens are all offline, so just a dark area. I will soon elaborate more on the different screens that are available. Here is the S-Line, exterior and interior, with a flat bottom steering wheel, for example. And then those seats, there are 2 basic seats available. A base seat, which has more room, and then this one here is the sport seat. The base seat is available in fabric and also in full leatherette. That's cool. And then the sport seat also with different surfaces. Here in this case, you can see here a little bit more shoulder support, for example, in the sport seat. In the sport seat, available with either a fabric leatherette mix with just minor animal skin material. I will soon show you those as well in a different car. Then they are available with Alcantara on the inside and animal skin on the outside. And this one is the full animal skin pack for the most cost-worthy option. And of course with all the drawbacks from animal skin. So the Alcantara package, as I mentioned earlier, not only in orange and also gray, and here the brown one. So different colors available for this Alcantara package. You can see it at the side of the seats and also at the dashboard again. In this turbo blue car, we have the gray Alcantara package right here. This is the most subtle one. I will go for this one. And you can see here also the seats with cloth or fabric on the inside and leatherette on the outside, and also with some Alcantara essence. Also the S Sport seats, really cool. I would exactly also pick this combination for the inside. Stays cool in summer and also warm in winter. This is the perfect combination, I think. And here we have a gray color of the seat. By the way, you could see those are new seats and how the animal skin wears out quite fast. But those ones here are the Alcantara mixed seats. So you have Alcantara on the outside and animal skin on the inside. But as I said, the best is to go for the fabric seats or for the fabric leatherette small animal skin part mix. And now let's get inside. It's very easy, and you have this upright SUV seating position. It is not a super high SUV seating position in this Audi Q3. So if you think about a Volvo XC40 or Volkswagen Tiguan, for example, you sit a little bit higher. Maybe it's also just felt the way the cockpit is oriented, but I can just tell you what I actually see and feel in this vehicle. The seats, they start with a manual option, and then you can also go electric to move them. That's of course pretty handy. There's also an electric support here for the lumbar area in the lower part, and the manual one for making the seat a little bit longer. Then you can adjust the steering wheel in a manual way. It's a very easy option and it feels super smooth. That's one of those details where you feel that the build quality is extremely high. I'm 1.86 m of 6'1", and that leaves me a lot of headroom still. If you pick the optional panoramic roof, I think in our static review first I showed you also one, then the headroom will be a little bit reduced, but you'll still be fine also when you're quite tall. The interior overview right there, have a horizontal layout again with this table style here with the Alcantara package. If you don't have the Alcantara package, by the way, then you have a harder surface, but still with the structure it's also okay. Then the top part of the dashboard, it's not super hard pack, it's a mix of hard and soft touch, I would call it that way. The steering is quite large, here again with a flat bottom, but you can very well reach the controls of the digital dashboard right there. And when I turn on, you can see that the screens come to life and there are different sizes available. It's a little bit complicated, therefore listen carefully now. So it starts on the left side with 10.25 inch. Whoa, that's music. Whoa, great music system, by the way. So this optional 15 speakers Bang & Olufsen sound system, I can really recommend it for music lovers, although it's very expensive. So 10.25 inch on the left standard without GPS. Next step would be the same size 10.25 inch but with GPS. That's then called virtual cockpit. The lowest one just digital cockpit. And this one here is the virtual cockpit plus 12.3 inch as we know it with GPS. And on the right side we'd start with 8.8 inch screen, smaller one, then the optional 10.1 inch screen as we see it right now. So here, this is then the top trim, so to say. I think they really should let go of the strategy. I mean, yes, you cannot get any analog instruments anymore, so to say, oh, I always get a digital screen, but then you start with a smaller one and also one without all the functions. I don't like that strategy, or do you? So, and other than that, what's still cool, you have the manual climate unit still with metal knurled turning knobs here, really cool, and also with a good clicking sound, for example, especially here, seat heating. In the lower part you can have the drive selector for the drive modes, still also on the volume knob, but you cannot really reach it that well. However, it's rather for the co-driver, and that's totally okay, because as a driver you can just use it here or at the steering wheel. Then the automatic gearbox, dual clutch, electric handbrake, and finally adaptive cup holders. So the processing quality here is really superb. Audi on top of the game in this segment. So the virtual cockpit has different views. You can have, for example, the assistance systems. You can have the GPS all the way, or just a little bit closer to the middle. Then you see the speed a little bit bigger. So you have a lot of choices how to do it, and also to zoom in and out. You can do it at the steering wheel with a knob. So it's a very cool system for sure. So this top display here, I mean, it's a great resolution here. Look at our area of Tyrol, really cool here. Wow, it looks so amazing. And the processor is also very fast. The same CPU unit than used in the A8, A6, so in the bigger Audi models. And you also have this touch screen. You can browse through telephone either via Bluetooth connection or then with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, with the cable connection here and on the phone apps. So that would be an Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all available. And vehicle, you can, for example, have the Audi Drive Select also here, but you can also just hotkey them in the lower area. So everything is very well to see and also intuitive to use. You directly see what's going on. And there's an optional rear view camera, really cool, a great resolution in the middle part here, and on the top part you can see the 360 view from above. And you also have this helping lines to see where are you actually going then. So the inner part is the actual car, and then where you would be changing it. You can also change the views then right here to this bigger view from above, just a rear view camera with a bigger angle. Also just the front tires, for example, that you do not damage those 20-inch rims. You can also deactivate it. And for example, also to the view to the front end again. So in the lower part you also have an inductive charging, but if you use Apple CarPlay anyway, so yeah, there we go. Didn't even have to turn on the engine for that. So it's charging now, and on the other side, one normal USB slot and a USB-C slot, so you have the choice there. I think that's good, definitely, for a transition. And finally, the middle armrest, well attached, with some more room inside. So also the space we have here on the interior has increased. So let's get in the rear, and this is also something which changed if you compare it to the predecessor. You have some more legroom now. I mean, I have the seat a little bit back now as I was driving, of course. It does fit with my knees. I could also be driving with the seat a little bit more in the front. That was possible. It was just a little bit cozy now. So this works for tall adults. We have no panoramic roof inbuilt here. And this works also with the 1m86 or 6'1". And the cool thing is, of course, that you can move the bench, the standard equipment. You can move it backward and forward. I can show you that here on the other side, how far that goes. Here we go. So, you know, that's really a difference then. So you can make the trunk a little bit larger or have more legroom. Isofix at the outside of the seats. You can flip the seats from here like this. You know, but I'll show you that, of course, from the trunk as well. And you can also vary a little bit in the seating angle. That's cool because you can then really decide if you want a more leaning back position or you want it a little bit more upright. You can decide about that. Then you have this armrest with some cup holders inside. And, whoa, sorry. And this also works as a ski hatch just to fold the middle part. And last but not least, in the lower part we have two standard USB slots and a 12-volt power supply. So you can open the trunk with the key or with the button right there, or also with this foot kick open mechanism. Here we go, it's quite handy. Yeah, I can really stand underneath it. That's really cool. Of course, if you have a lower basement garage, you can just also put it like this and then hold the closing button until a beeping sound is being heard. Then you can just, it opens just like here. So it's a good feature, and almost every electric tailgate car has it. Then, well, there are different capacities available. Look at this standard setup. That would be 530 liters. But then if you look here, I've made the bench, you can show you earlier, 15 centimeters front in the back. You can actually push it on the rail. Now, as it is now, when I would put both forward, it would be 675 liters. So you can vary that a little bit. And the maximum setup then, if I flip all the seats, that would be 1,525 liters. That's like this when I put it right there. Now I reach over for this one. Here we go. Then of course it's better to close this gap right there. So you're very flexible. I'll soon show you also how it looks like with luggage. This net here, I mean, you can secure some stuff. You don't need to have it. And then what's also interesting is below here, there's some more room still left. Yeah, this is then a little bit unpractical with that net to open that. So here we go. And for example, you can store the net right here, like this. And this one is in this case sound system equipment. Great sound, I can tell you, from this optional sound system. And when we remove the top cover right there, I mean, I like to transport bicycles in cars, and then I'm always asking myself, first of all, here, you can let that stand open. Oh, Holger's almost crashing here with the camera. And then put the cover underneath. So, how was that meant? Maybe the other way around. Yeah, you see, this is live on tape. So it's not all shiny as it is. Just like this, it seems. Is it? Okay, then this gets ripped off. Yeah, and now I remember from the Static Premium. Yeah, I'm sure you guys laughing your beep off at the moment. So when you remove those side pads, then it does fit in, and so here we go. And here we have another display of what you can actually fit in the trunk of this vehicle. So this looks even more massive, of course, than when it would be totally empty. Look also how the other suitcases are stacked up there. I mean, they really tested around what is the maximum size they could put in the bags, and it really looks great. but I think it shows you clearly that it gained a lot of trunk capacity when you compare it to the predecessor. Welcome to Thomas's driving lounge with the driving part of the Audi Q3 in this new generation. So this vehicle here equipped with 20-inch rims and the sports suspension, so picked from those 3 available suspensions. Really the sporty setup you can have, also with 231 horsepower, 2-liter TFSI. So this is really the sports Q3 so far, until the later we'll probably again make it like an SQ3 or probably also even again an RS Q3. But so far the sportiest normal Q3. And we are here in Italy today. It's not, the Italy you would imagine, because it's the Alpine Italy, so to say. And the good thing is, let's go to the dynamic mode directly. So dynamic mode, then the sports shifting mode is also activated, and let's see how sporty this car really is. Soon we'll also get to the motorway in the second part, and also tell you more about the acceleration and speed there, and more the everyday driving features. Now, let's have it sporty. So quite nice sound as well, although it's just a very small engine. This S-line here we have, and also there's basically a package with the sports suspension, the progressive steering, and also the 20-inch rims. There's one package, and the progressive steering is really great. So you see, I don't have to turn the steering that much. That really helps me for parking in and out, of course, in the city, but then in these agile driving situations, I can keep both hands at the steering wheel all the time. I don't have to grab around. And it also conveys a very good feeling, connection to the road. See now in this bend, just have to turn a little bit more, but only because it's really a hair needle pen. So right here now, if you have something like 90 degrees, no problem. So I really like the steering ratio they have here. The steering wheel could be a little bit smaller and would be a little bit better to handle. Wow, really cool. And here also the stiff setup with the sport suspension and 20-inch rims also plays a good role. So it doesn't really feel like an SUV, it feels more like a small sports car, or like a hot hatch already, and without having the S or the RS version. That's pretty cool. In the S driving mode we also keep it at a little bit lower gears. However, it's not really tuned for uphill racing, so sometimes, for example, here now in 4th gear, so then you can use the shifting pedals and you stay in manual mode. So the gears are not changed automatically then. They can also shift back, for example, now to 2nd gear, and the dual clutch transmission does a great job doing that. Now you can also stay in 2nd gear to have a little bit more boost. And the engine is really very powerful. The acceleration figure with the 6.3 seconds also pretty cool. Well, in the all-wheel drive, since it's also giving you torque to the rear wheels, you don't feel that you would be driving, such a predominantly front-wheel drive car. There's always more torque going over the front wheels, yes, but you don't feel that it would be understeering so much. So I think they managed that very well too. What a lovely road! I hope you guys are also enjoying it. And indeed, it's an SUV that you can enjoy while driving. And also if you think about, wow, what a view, isn't that great? So if you also think about some of the competitors, this one here is surely then also among the sportiest, especially in this very setup. And also feels a little bit smaller than it actually is. If you compare it to the predecessor generation, this one here has definitely grown up. It drives on the one hand smoother, more refined, is more silent as for the wind insulation. We'll also test that soon on the motorway. and is really way sportier, especially if you have the sport suspension. We'll see how that plays out then later on in other driving situations, but here of course it's really cool when you just go left to right and back again. Also with the manual pedals here. And not even, you know, when I'm accelerating in between, not even pushing it all the way because I would be too fast and maybe catching up to some other vehicles. When you want to overtake someone, you can also, for example, use the shifting pedals here, that you get more boost directly, and sometimes it's even safer to accelerate a little bit fast and then you got that maneuver done. So let's face this Toyota Auris in front of us. Maybe we can overtake there when there's a construction site or something. Oh, there's a traffic light. So that was really cool. Amazing ride in a sporty way. But what about when you drive a little bit less sporty or on the motorway? So what about usual traffic? So not the special agile driving test, but when you're just on the road in the city maybe and on the motorway. So what you feel with this combination of sport suspension and also the 20-inch rims, it is a little bit harsh. So you know, the bigger the tires are, the less comfort you have, the less rolling comfort, of course. And 20-inch rims are really huge for such a vehicle. And then when you also have the sport suspension, so not the base and not the adaptive one, it really gets a little bit rough. I mean, it's still suitable for everyday driving, but if you seek comfort, then you should definitely stick to the base suspension or the adaptive one, and also go a little bit smaller with those tires so that you don't pick the biggest ones. When the road is even, then it's of course a very good driving feeling and also a sporty one, as we've just shown you. That's pretty cool. And the interesting thing is also that the car really feels a little bit smaller and shorter than it actually is. That also speaks for the agility of this vehicle. You also have a good overview. So also the side here, this A-pillar is not too thick, for example. You can really see that very well, everything. Also to the rear with this frameless mirror. The steering wheel again is a little bit big, I think. So the car would probably feel a little bit more agile when it was a little bit smaller. And soon we'll also get to the motorway and see what about the sound insulation, and also when we push it a little bit harder, drive a little bit faster and so on. Also runs very well in the straightaway, really silent here so far at the lower speeds. So the car also enables you to relax a lot. And now to the side, you can see very well in the side mirrors. We also have a blind spot monitor, as I can soon show you that too. At the moment I have the GPS mounted in the virtual cockpit. That also helps me not to be distracted, like to look here. I can really look straight in those instruments. That's really cool while driving, and maybe also the co-driver can check something else on the infotainment screen. Here again in the corner, precise steering. I think we go with the telepass. We have this mounted here. It's always very weird, you know, those motorways where you have to pay for. We don't know that in Germany. Yet. And I hope it will also stay that way. So, here we go. I'm still in the D mode, the normal driving mode. Here again, a very neutral, balanced feeling in the corner, and due to the sport suspension there's hardly any tilting. So this is of course really helpful when you go a little bit fast. I want to have some more fun. That's really cool then with the suspension. And still, even though if it's a sport suspension, it's still more comfortable than a lot of the other competitors in the base setup. So now some acceleration on the motorway. We'll go to the sport mode. So we have a faster downshift, And since we can drive 110 here now, we drop back to 60 and then we go from 60 kilometers to 110. Let's go. That's it. Wow, that was pretty impressive. The all-wheel drive also delivers it in a very constant and harmonious way. So the system here, the Quattro, in this case, there are different kinds of Quattro systems. It's just one brand name. So we have predominantly front-wheel drive, and then also torque is transported to the rear wheels, especially when you accelerate very hard. And the acceleration figures said earlier 6.3 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. It's really impressive, so a very fast one. Of course, I also want to talk about the consumption, and I mean, with those acceleration tests, you cannot really say that so far. Usually it's very good when you have like a minimum consumption, you know, when you reset it, for example, here on the motorway, and then you can say, usually from the minimum consumption on, with cruise control on the motorway, you can then add, some 2 liters on 100 kilometers, something, when you have more city driving and so on. Adaptive cruise control is also one of the very good features you can pick. I have it also here in this very vehicle, and it's on at the moment. It's working very well. Let's also see how the car is then reducing the speed when we face, for example, the car in front of us very soon now. On the tunnel you can also see how the car looks like in the tunnel. Now the radar system is picking it up. I'm not decreasing the speed. See, the car is doing that for me, and when I move out of the shade, here again nothing doing with my foot, car is increasing speed. They really got that system quite well. So indeed the car delivers you a very refined driving feeling, and I mean, you should also be able to hear that on camera. We're driving more than 100 kilometers now, or more than 60 miles an hour, and it's super silent in here. So sound insulation wise, a great job, and probably among, or maybe also the most silent compact SUV we've driven so far. Funnily is also that although it has the same length in the Volkswagen Tiguan, and it's on the same platform, this one here feels kind of smaller and, somehow a little bit more agile. This might be due to the cockpit layout, because it's also more sporty oriented around the driver, and you don't sit too high in comparison, for example, to Tiguan. Also, if you compare it to a Seat Ateca, which is a little bit different than when you look at the platform in detail. The same base platform, but then they have like this MQB A1, A2, and A0. So that's a little differentiation then. But very interesting that they still have somehow own driving feelings, although they all share a lot of technology. So, also what I can tell you from driving on the motorway here, this really sets a benchmark, I think. So, I mean, if you think about how should a compact SUV drive, this is probably just it. You can maybe argue that some might expect a stronger SUV feeling, because you really don't sit too high. It doesn't feel that much as an SUV, so it also has something of a compact vehicle, somehow in between. So, and for example, when I buy an SUV, I really want that high SUV seating position. It's not that you don't get it here at all. It's just that in some of the competitors, they set more focus on this SUV driving feeling. That's again just a matter of preference, what you really prefer. So we can also click through this front menu of the digital instruments, always with a nice clicking sound when I'm using that. And just cruise control here on the motorway at 110 kilometers an hour. And that gives me an average of 8.7 liters on 100 kilometers at the moment. So something between 8 and 9 liters. That's not too good. So just using cruise control, it should definitely be better. So let's say 9 liters on 100 kilometers. You have to be probably even calculated with more than that when you take into account that you would have some stop and go in city driving or something. And that would be something 25 mpg something. So really not a good result here. So, and we've seen it a lot, that the engines here from the Volkswagen Corporation, so BMW, Audi, Skoda, Seat, they are great in performance. They are also very silent. They feel so refined when you drive them. You can enjoy when you need the power, which is shown here as well. It has a lot of power. At the same time, you can drive it very slow and calmly. Really feels good overall. It's perfect. Also with the dual clutch, then with the transmission, you either don't feel the transitions at all from the shifting, or if you really want it, for example, in sport mode, it hammers right in. But then again, consumption is often quite high. With the drive select, by the way, we can switch from this auto mode also into the efficiency mode. That is, for example, decreasing the throttle input, helps you a little bit to save fuel, and also this car is just rolling. And you can go to the dynamic mode, as we shown you earlier, that then lets the car work a little bit more, goes to the S mode, goes a gear down, turns up the RPMs and so on. So you're able to adjust that. And if you have the adaptive suspension, also the dampers are fitted accordingly, so it has a little sharper rate than when you're at the dynamic mode, and comfort mode is also a little bit softer than here. When you have this sport suspension here, I mean, the steering is a little bit softer in the comfort mode, for example. In the sports mode, a little bit hard, but that's the biggest difference. Then the other big difference is really that when you're in a dynamic mode, it goes to this S shifting mode, and you have the changes right there. I mean, if you want the most power, then we can recommend this engine here. But again, if you want a better fuel economy, then you should go for another one, because this surely won't get prettier consumption-wise. You know, the new diesels also all have the particle filter plus the SCR injection. The petrol engines have the particle filters now too. So you know, one thing is against the fine dust, like the microparticle dust for the particle filters, and the SCR is against the NOx, and the petrols don't need that, the diesels do. So if you want a better fuel economy, it's probably better that you go for the diesel in here, if that's available in your market. That's the automatic traffic announcement. It's good that you can also very well cancel it then while we're just hitting it. Other than that, of course, especially when you have to be concentrated here on the motorway, it's quite narrow. Driving here near Bozen in Italy. Better just look in the front to the instruments and don't play around with that so much. It's good that we still have those classic climate knobs that we can easily control. I can even do that, you know, by just looking to the front and feeling it around this metal knurled knob. That's really cool. So we still have, although everything is digitalized, this rather old school stuff, and it's really cool to have it, because you can so well control it. And then some things don't need to be more complicated than they are at the moment, just for the purpose of making it even more digital, I think. Or what do you think? So, I think also on the motorway, this guy really did a fantastic job. So driving-wise, they really mastered everything. It's just that I could recommend you not to go for the sport suspension and the big rims unless your main purpose of buying a compact SUV is to drive sporty still with a compact SUV. So now we switched vehicles. This one here with the adaptive suspension and 19-inch rims, as well as the TDI, the diesel with 150 horsepower, still all-wheel drive, but manual transmission, so we have even more variation for you. It's really strange that this 150 horsepower diesel is either available with all-wheel drive and manual gearbox or automatic and front-wheel drive. Usually it's, you know, they make it the other way around, that all-wheel drive and automatic is combined and front-wheel drive and manual to save cost or something. You know, that's how it is here. So, we'll later also tell you something about the consumption of this diesel. At the moment, of course, not, because we are primarily going downhill. Here on this downhill, it's good to test the suspension and also the steering setup. Since the sports car, let's talk about it in that way. So this sports setup we had earlier, I felt that the steering with the progressive steering there was maybe a little bit better. However, the car already has from base setup a rather progressive steering, so that's good. You can see I don't have to steer that much, so it's still pretty cool. Also with a good grip handle, it's also quite slim and sporty, like that. The manual gearbox, I mean, the automatic surely offers you more comfort while driving, especially when in traffic situations. However, this manual gearbox is quite cool. Yes, the shifting lever maybe looks a little bit old school, but the ways you shift, what you feel, is actually quite smooth. Here, of course, when you're going down, you can stay in a lower gear to use some of the engine brake too. When you shift up, for example, there's hardly any resistance, but still you somehow feel how you're shifting. I had better manual gearboxes, yeah, that's for sure. Pretty seldom also that we had a manual gearbox in Audi. So overall, I can still recommend to go for the automatic gearbox, the S-Tronic, just to add some more comfort. This one would be theoretically then to save some money, but then again, when you have the engine with the all-wheel drive, it's already more coast intensive. So probably that's not a thing where you should save money. So maybe get this car, which is a very comfortable compact SUV, more in a comfortable gearbox as well. Then you can see when I'm in those corners here, still good sporty ride with the adaptive suspension. We can also set it here, for example, to the dynamic mode to make it a little bit stiffer then from the reaction. So here you have the choice, and it really adapts accordingly, and it handles still so well. So this is also one of the key findings now. So you do not need the sport suspension just to have the car handling very well. And again, also the 19-inch rims, a little bit smaller, give us a little bit more comfort. Yeah, they still look great. I mean, it's not a problem. I think you can also go with 18-inch and the car still looks great, and you reduce the risk even a little bit more that you damage those rims. And you can see I'm not racing this downhill, but also not super slow, but I'm easily catching up to those SUVs in front of us, because the car is actually quite quick and great in handling. So also a good sporty result here from the adaptive suspension. Let's see how that one changes when I go to the comfort mode. Yeah, I think it shakes up a little bit more. What do you say, Holger? This co-driver shakes more a little bit in comfort mode. Okay. So it is noticeable that it's a little bit softer, especially going like, when you go like this and shake the co-driver a little bit around. That looks funny, Holger. And then I can do it in dynamic mode. Let's see. Yeah, so the car shakes less then. Again, not a super huge difference, but it is noticeable, so you have the choice then for that, especially when you're going then on the motorway very soon. Then you can leave it in the comfort mode just to be a little bit more comfortable. Or when you're going really higher speed at the motorway, then you might want, again, a little stiffer setup. So the good thing with this adaptive suspension is you're not lost with just one setting. you can really adapt your setting if you just feel one day like this, or depending on the situation. However, I'm also always a friend of not boosting the costs for each vehicle, because this car can get super expensive. It's one of the downsides. Well, that's still the navigation commands. Good thing is that you can easily also deactivate those voice commands. Also, an advantage of the compact SUV, the smaller ones, that was a very narrow situation in the streets here. We very often have that in Europe. And then with a compact SUV, you can still remain calm and cool, and it will probably, most probably work. Whereas when you have a bigger SUV, it can actually be a problem, and you say, oh, you have to stop, and then, that won't fit, the car is too wide. But it's no problem with this one here. So I really like those compact SUV setup because you already have the high seating position, but you're not already that wide, that long, that it would give you problems in the city. So I think it's a very good compromise where a lot of people can actually use the vehicle for various purposes. And not to forget, especially when you have the bench set forward, that the trunk area, just when the bench is forward, then has a larger base loading volume than the Audi A6. Pretty interesting. So especially in the volume, as we shown you earlier, the car really increased a lot in the trunk area, what you can do with it. Here, by the way, as for the acceleration, when we, for example, go to second gear with this TDI and 30 kilometers an hour to 70, I'll make the gauges a little bit bigger, let's go. Plop, that's it. So you can see the diesel takes some time until the power sets in, until the turbo really sets in, until the torque sets in. There the petrol engine has an advantage because it's more powerful just from the lower RPMs, but then suddenly the torque sets in for the diesel and it's really powerful too. And I will show you also that very soon now on the motorway, that the diesel is quite good for the motorway, but for countryside routes in the city, the petrol feels more alive. And definitely also in this 230 horsepower spec, which is then again a little bit expensive. So from the low RPMs out, the diesel here, with the 150 horsepower variant, doesn't feel that powerful sometimes. Also when you're, for example, going uphill. But when you're here in the dynamic mode, then the RPMs are turned up higher, and there's a good reaction. So I'm pretty happy with the auto function to have a little bit softer suspension. You can also, for example, feel it with the speed bumps. And then again, just go a gear down, and then the diesel also gives you some more power. Yes, the petrol engine is more fun to drive, but maybe my tip for the day would be to not pick the highest petrol engine spec, because that's also very expensive, but maybe go for a little smaller horsepower petrol engine, or maybe for the 1.5, or I think the best setup would be the 2-liter one with 190 horsepower. That could be good compromise between price performance as for that. But the diesel will for sure give us a better fuel economy. I'll reset. I mean, now going down to 3.5 liters, that's really unrealistic because we're just going downhill. So as soon as we hit the motorway, very soon, I'll reset the MPG meter, and I'll also tell you what the consumption is in this respect there. So, yes, adaptive suspension is cool. Base suspension will probably also do fine. Adaptive suspension if you have a little bit more budget. Sport suspension, we can definitely advise against that because it reduces the comfort. 20-inch rims as well for the driving, that just look cool. 19-inch is still okay, especially in combination with the adaptive suspension. If you go with the base suspension, probably go for the 18-inch rims. Driving-wise, again, super silent, very harmonious ride, really cool. I've been recently also talking about like a sovereignty of the ride. We've been talking about that language-wise, if you can really say that. I think it's like a cool term to say, how a car is basically flawless in driving when it's sovereign. what you think, British and American guys, for using this term. Would be interested in your feedback. Really nice light we have here now. So beautiful. There we go.
Bitte in 200 Metern am Ende der Straße links abbiegen.
I thought I could. Well, can I deactivate it again? Here, I think, right? Options and then GPS. I hope some of you guys from Tyrol will not be mad if I mentioned we were in Italy. I'm not sure how you think about it, so I know that you're from Tyrol and not from Italy. You know, always those regional things. So, and here we go. Yeah, it's so much fun to drive this car. Really cool. And funny thing is that with the adaptive suspension, the car feels a little bit more SUV-ish. So the sport suspension was that stiff, but as I said earlier, it feels more like a compact hatch. And here with the adaptive suspension, especially when you are in the normal auto mode, not in this dynamic setting, it really feels more like an SUV. And that, I think, would be also very important to me, because I want an SUV to exactly feel like an SUV. It's funny that some of the traffic signs here are also in German, and a lot of people really speak German here. Interesting, always those regions where, you know, between country borders, where different cultures mix and also different languages are spoken. Very interesting regions here. And you can see here also all the way around, this is a very famous region here, close to Bozen in South Tyrol, for apples, great apples, and if you taste one of them, really delicious. And yeah, we know one criticism point about the really cool, silent but yet powerful running petrol engine was that the consumption was just too high. I hope we can solve that here now with the diesel. The question is always, how many kilometers are you blind spot monitor? By the way, now you can finally see it very well. It's also very good visualization here with the yellow dot, and soon as I see here, when I set the turning indicator, then it's also flashing. So here again, just the light, and when I set the turning indicator, oh, he really wants to know, make the turn, there's something, then you get this flash warning. So that's very good system. And here in those Volkswagen AG cars, you can see that the blind spot monitor already reacts when the car is approaching from the rear, not only in the moment where it's in the blind spot. You can then again argue that it's good that when it's in the blind spot at the moment, like in the PSA Corporation, the French cars, that you really know what's going on. But on the other hand, of course, cars are accelerating, and then maybe it's at some point too late, when it flashes too late, basically. So I think this system, to me, some of it's a little bit better. So I'll set it now to cruise control, 110 kilometers an hour. Drive a little bit, see how that one feels. Here also now at a higher speed, the adaptive suspension in the auto mode still gives us a good ride. So it's not that it would be too soft or something by no way. It's just, you know, a little bit more forgiving when there are some certain bumps on the road. Let's also test here again with dynamic mode. There you get a little bit more feedback from the road, but it's still definitely more comfortable in the dynamic mode with the adaptive suspension than the base sport suspension, which is not an adaptive one. So sometimes there's also an adaptive sport suspension, but here it's really like base normal suspension, adaptive suspension, and the sport suspension, which is again a normal one, not adaptive. So that's the way they set it out here for the all-new Audi Q3. So dynamic mode here then gives me a little bit more stability maybe. I mean, it's not too easy to drive here because the motorway is quite narrow, and then also at the speed here, more than 60 miles an hour, 110 kilometers an hour. And still also the comfort mode makes it a little bit softer, but still you remain very well in control. And that's also to me one of the key characteristics of this very vehicle. You remain in control all the time, so you have a good feeling of the car. Overall, that makes the ride also very safe. And we can just stress again this, seeing that the speaker in the front of this optional Bang & Olufsen system, pretty expensive option, but it gives an amazing sound, probably the best sound we've heard so far in a compact SUV. So now looking at the consumption meter here at the moment, we're just at cruise control. So that's about 6.5 liters on 100 kilometers. I mean, that's definitely better than with the petrol engine where we had something close to 9. Still, when you just have the cruise control and here with the diesel, I think even that should be a little bit lower. So that's something, you know, and in the areas like close to 40 mpg. I mean, that's overall quite decent. I would wish that also this one here goes a little bit down. It seems to be dropping down here. I mean, on those driving events, we cannot give you like 100% indication of the fuel consumption, just let's say 90. The most reliable thing is again to test it at steady speeds on the motorway to give you basically a minimum consumption, and then you can add like 1 or 2 liter or deduct, let's say, 5 to 10 mpg for a figure when you would be driving it in traffic in a city and stop and go. So I don't think we'll ever reach 5 liters or 47 mpg. Will be more liters or less mpg than that. I think close to 6 liters or then should be something around 40 mpg. That could be a realistic figure. So definitely better than with a petrol engine. And again, the question is how many kilometers are you driving per year? Then you can calculate if it really makes sense then to go for the more expensive diesel. Yeah, but overall, to say something about the driving characteristics of this car, it's definitely one of the best in class. Again, super silent. This is the most important factor for me. Feels so much evolved through the new generation here and all the experience they've put in the vehicle.
And now to our conclusion for today with the all-new generation of the Audi Q3. For sure, it has grown up in the exterior and you can get different bright colors as well, and styling choices can more individualize the car. And it almost looks like a smaller Q5. On the interior, a great processing quality, also more room all over the place in the rear and also especially in the trunk, so more usable. Yes, it has grown a little bit also in the exterior, but the usage of space, if you take that relation, has become even better. Then also full digitalization. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Great displays and so on, especially in the highest trim here. But I think a little bit complicated for the customer that you have so many different steps and screen sizes to go for. I think they could make it a little bit easier there. Audi is also on their way now for more sustainable materials overall. Last year they have ignored it pretty much. Now they finally listen, especially for their smaller cars. They also bring some animal skin alternatives. You know, there are some parts still, even in the leatherette seat and in the fabric leatherette seat, there are minor parts in real leather. Why? Well, the question is, you know, they are very conservative company, that's why. But they have removed basically almost all of it, and even in the animal skin full seats, they even have increased the part of leatherette and decreased the part of real leather. So they're now finally on a good path for sure also in this respect. Driving wise, was very cool indeed, very sporty, especially in this setup here today. Sound installation, superb. Overall, a car that gives you a lot of calmness but sportiness at the same time. It has not that kind of high SUV driving character, a little bit more compact size driving character. It's just a question what you prefer. And of course, with the sport suspension and the 20-inch rims, a rather stiff ride. You have to like that. If you're, let's say, a normal comfort-seeking customer, just stay with the base suspension, smaller rims, or then adaptive suspension if you want to spend more money. Yeah, talking about money, 35,000 euros would be the base price in Germany. This car, as it stands here right there, easily over 50, maybe almost 60,000. So that gets super expensive, one of the most expensive out there in the compact SUV segment, but surely also one of the best. What do you think? Let's discuss this vehicle in the comments. Over 1/3 of BMW sales are SUVs meanwhile, and in 2017 the BMW X1 was the most successful BMW worldwide. Well, then they figured, let's make another SUV, a sibling of the X1 called X2. So the manufacturers have great ideas what to do with color names. You remember the Kurkuma yellow at Volkswagen? This one here is called galvanic gold. Ooh. So what have they done with the front here? You see that the BMW double kidney is, first of all, for a still relatively small car, really huge, and this part here would usually be here, so they flipped it around a little bit to make it a little bit different style than usual with the BMW double kidney, to make this car a little bit more extraordinary, actually. The base model, by the way, and you can easily go for that, is a little bit styled differently in the left area. It doesn't make too much of a difference, and it's also in the vehicle color right here. The same goes for the M Sport model, which has a larger air intake on the left and the right side, and is painted in vehicle color right here, a little bit stronger bumper in the lower part. And this one here is the M Sport X model, which has this sporty crossover look at the same time, and then with the contrast silver or gray here in this area already. I will tell you more about the difference also in the side profile. Halogen headlights are the standard one. Those ones here, the optional LED, full LED headlights you can get. 4.36 m or 14'3" is the total length of this vehicle. It's exactly the same as the BMW X1, and it's also on the same front-wheel drive architecture, optional then with all-wheel drive. Galvanic gold here again in full glory. This one here, the M Sport X model, you can see has again this gray contrast at the wheel arches. If you go for the M Sport line without the X, this is in vehicle color. And the base model has the normal crossover SUV style, just with black plastic here around the wheel arches, which is again totally fine. So here I can already tell you, just save some money. You know, we are doing videos to give you the best advice, and that you can also save money, get the best price performance value. Stay with the base model and already looks fine in crossover and sporty stylish. 17-inch to 20-inch rims are available. Those ones here are 19-inch. They come with M Sport X or the M Sport package and have this two-color scheme. Pretty, spectacular for sure. And one more thing, here you can see also the big difference to the X1. This one has this coupe style ending. Also the roof is flatter and the window graphic is very narrow, making a bigger shoulder and also a sportier appearance. And another BMW logo. They say it is inspired by former BMW coupes. And yes, vintage BMW coupes had the logo here. I mean, it looks quite nice. But what is funny that overall you then have 8 BMW logos on the car. Front, rear, side, same side on the other side, makes 4. And 4 wheels, 8 BMW logos. So everyone see you have a BMW. And now to the rear, which has rather a compact hatch style than an SUV style. The tail lamp is also horizontally drawn, here also with the LED daytime running light. What is special is that those ones are real exhaust pipes and they are really huge. Even with the diesel here, this is the diameter actually of a BMW X6. And let me just confirm that. That's the actual exhaust. It's true. Then this one here again, the M Sport X line to have more contrast here. However, you can also, seen in the side profile also at the lower parts of the doors. I think the M Sport X line is a little bit too much. Not very clean in the design. But what do you think? I would like to hear your feedback on that one. Is it too much contrast? Would you rather prefer it in vehicle color? just put it in the comments. Other than that, you can see the BMW logo here on the rear. This one will play an effect when we open the trunk, because you can flip it like this and then the trunk opens like this. Soon more to the interior and the trunk space. This one will also be very exciting. Well guys, this one here is a very nasty BMW. It's basically the BMW XXX, because this is the BMW X2 M Sport X X-Drive 20D. Well, those namings, I don't know. So what about engines? This one here is a diesel 2-liter 4-cylinder, available with 150, 190, the one we're driving today, or 231 horsepower. Then you get a 1.5-liter entry petrol level engine, 3-cylinder, 136 horsepower, and a 2-liter 4-cylinder petrol, 192 horsepower and 231. And exclusively for our friends in the US, you get the 2-liter 4-cylinder petrol engine also with 260 horsepower. Well, you guys in the US, you get the big boost. This is the car key, but you can also use the keyless entry like this, closing the car, or then just do finger or hand inside there and then the closing sound sounds a little bit high frequency, doesn't it? Not too pleasing, I have to admit. But then very well processed. The interior, this soft touch on the top part, then this modern, not sure how to call it, structure. I don't know. But then a nice fabric here, also with a special design on the inside, leather red covers right here. So this is really, really well done. Also enough space in the lower part. Just for bigger bottles, I think doesn't fit that well. You open the trunk, the electric tailgate here, by the way, also, if you like. Then the interior, which is the M Sport X package. And that one is coming with the M Sport steering wheel. And also the sport seats, more shoulder support, and very well done, this microfiber or Alcantara on the outside and fabric on the inside. Similar we've seen in the 330i with the M Sport package in the 3 Series review. If you have the M Sport package, those yellow contrast stitches will be in blue. But now, pay attention, this one here is only available in Europe, or at least not in the US. The base for all is fabric seats. They will be perfectly fine, you can go with them. And in the US, you only get optional then the animal skin. So I would, just tell you that you can stay with the base model, save some money. And here you have, for example, Germany, you also have fabric as base, and then this Alcantara seat is also optional, this Alcantara fabric mix. It's really pity that they don't offer that one in the US. And no sensor tech available also for this model. Sensor tech is the leatherette BMW is offering. Seating position, well, I feel I have a little bit more room in the X1. One with is 86 or 6'1", still enough headroom, especially if you don't have the panoramic roof. As the seat is more a lying back position when I put it down, I tend to get it a little bit more upright, that the seat is a little bit more even. So it's a little bit more comfortable to sit in. Memory function also available. The steering wheel can be adjusted all ways you might want to have it. Also easy to do that. Steering wheel, also the M Sport here, great to steer, compact ride size, great grip handle and stuff. Interesting, by the way, that you have another storage space in the front here, and this is attention to details here. Smoothly sliding down, not falling down. That's nicely done. The instruments, you can see nothing so far, just the circles here. Then when I put on the ignition, then they come to life and very clear to read. Nicely done. So I think it's also a good compromise between this analog and digital discussion. Interior overview. general, this horizontal stress. Of course, we know everything basically from the X1. Here in the M Sport X package, you also have the yellow contrast stitches here. Nice surfaces also they use for the dashboard. They have a structure, they look high class and also are a little bit soft touch. This one is still left here with those hotkeys, and you see I don't have to press them. I can just swipe over them, and then it's saying, for example, like the favorites they have saved on that one. So you can actually individualize that. Steering wheel again from this perspective, also a nice design, cruise control on the left and volume on the right, for example. A separate climate unit. To me that's very important, just to, not to be distracted while driving and just easily do it. Well guys, it's really hard to film the head-up display. I hope you can see it a little bit. It's not flickering in real life, and it's doing a great job to keep your line of sight on the road and still see info of speed and maximum speed allowed, and some GPS information too. Infotainment system, here it is. So where's this right frame? You can either control it with a central control knob in the middle console as you used to BMW, but here finally also with touchscreen available. The GPS is very well thought out. You can clearly see things, and it is really, really responsive. Even if you zoom in on the sea, you see great for this responsiveness. Then the home screen again. Communications, you can either just connect your phone via Bluetooth, that's possible, or you can also use the real connections. Here you have to go down and manage mobile devices, connect a new device. Android Auto is not available, but Apple CarPlay, and that one is also available wireless. That's special with BMW. However, so far they include it in the car price, but then in the future there are rumors that they want to introduce a subscription model. Not just sure what to think about that. Glove box, standard size. Yeah, comes down slowly, but not too much room in there. Then thought out well here also with a soft touch around, yellow contrast. In the front you can put bottles, but the holes are not adaptive. And in the very front there's this adapter here for the 12-volt power supply. I would put an adapter maybe with USB chargers in there. I'll soon show you why. Then the automatic shifting lever, the sport mode selection. I will talk about that when we drive the car. This is the classic control for the infotainment system if you don't want to do it by touch. Then under the armrest you have one USB port just. Well, you can of course charge your phone there. And then in the armrest, it's another possibility. When you put the phone right here, this is also for inductive charging and for the car antenna connection. And this armrest then with the leatherette cover can be adjusted. So it's also good to have it in the middle. And on special request, here the mirror is actually quite small. You cannot see that much, but it has an automatic light that goes on along with it. So let's take a look at the rear compartment. Well, let's say you need a van for your family, but you don't like a van style and rather want an SUV, but it shouldn't be too big. This one still works, you can see. Even if I would be driving as a tall driver, this works knee room wise. They have these gaps on the back of the seats. Also headroom wise, no problem for taller people. We have a lot of room in here. And also Isofix anchor points there, if you want to put 2 child seats on the exterior parts. 2 more of the sound system. This the Harman Kardon sound system, which is actually pretty decent sound. So if you're a music lover, it's a worthwhile option. Same Alcantara layout here, beautiful in the quality also for the rear. You sit, by the way, pretty upright and pretty comfortable. So I'm really delighted by that. And I would have expected that roof-wise, the X1 is way better than the X2 just from design. But you can see it's still perfectly fine here too. Cup holders here for the middle parts. They are adaptive, that when the children put in the beverage, they're really kept tight. I think that's important. And you can of course already flip the seats from here, not up there, but in the lower part you have this lever you can pull. Well, that's not too easy with one hand, so I'll use 2. There we go. top tether on the back part. Of course, we'll take a look how that one looks like from the trunk. And now the loading area, well, it still looks quite nice for a compact vehicle. Below here you have really a lot more space, but then this cover is there that you can load things through easier, just to put a backpack inside that you can see the dimension a little bit better. And I can also flip it around here, not only 2/3, 1/3 split, even the middle part can be put separately. And here we go. But of course, the X1, if you look at the height right here and also the width, the X1 offers you a little bit more room in the rear, so the design on the exterior limits it a little bit, but still, considering it looks so designish on the exterior, you still got a lot of flexibility. Welcome to the driving part. Oh, there's sand on the road. Well, I could have just driven over the sand, but if there was no facing traffic, made this great maneuver. I hope Michelle wasn't too surprised. For co-drivers or cameramen, it's always, when you don't know what's happening, you cannot hold on to the steering wheel. Yeah, I mean, that proves what the car is capable of. Actually, it's a nice direct steering and it is really super agile. They've also set it up, in contrast to the X1, to be sporty in every different setup. And you have the different setups you can pick, actually, suspension-wise. There's the base suspension, which is already sportier than the X1 base suspension. Then there's the M Sport suspension, 10 millimeters lower, the one we're driving here today. And then, also 10 millimeters lower, there's an adaptive sport suspension, which then has a span of comfort and sport. Is then more comfortable in the comfort mode than this one, but even sportier than this one in the sport mode. So pretty interesting. I think I would go either for the base suspension, save money, have a more comfortable ride, or go all the way with the adaptive one that you can pick accordingly to the situation. Because this one here, the M Sport, normal sport suspension, is really sporty and really stiff. So as long as the roads are good, this is super fun. Really great drive. This one then doesn't really drive like an SUV, it rather drives like a sports car. And there's also now coming a very nice part ahead where we can cruise this car around really nicely. So again, as long as the roads are good, nice, but here, for example, now some bumps, you really feel them. So some potholes and stuff, that is getting rather uncomfortable. And for everyday driving, this might be a reason, again, to stay with the base, or then if you have plenty of money or just go for a leasing with an interesting rate, have a lot of stuff included, then get the adaptive one. It's the same what I said with the BMW X1. Here again, the M Sport suspension is super fun to drive, but again, can be too uncomfortable in your everyday driving life experience, theoretically, depending on your road. If you have bad roads where you are close by, then probably don't go with it. And if you have great roads and have super sporty fun, then maybe you can do that. So let's continue with our review. Now we can apply some more speed. We're taking here this 190 horsepower diesel is doing a great job acceleration wise, so this is perfectly fine. Also, you do not need more power. I would like to test a petrol engine that was not available yet, but will be at the later stage. Here again, you see how precise the steering wheel reacts. It's really a lot of fun to drive this vehicle. I really enjoy that. So much fun. Well, we know with the biggest petrol it will be available in the US. You can have, of course, a little bit more fun. Consumption-wise, you always have to see. Here, for example, the minimum is 6 liters on 1 kilometers an hour. A realistic one rather up to about 7 if you mix more city driving and stuff. The petrol will be a little bit more. So it's not the highest consumptions we had so far, but it's also not really a very low one. Again, the focus here is on the very fun, agile, sporty driving, and that is really done perfectly. Indeed, a little sportier setup with the X1, but also the X1 you can drive with a lot of fun. That's, for example, it was a fierce bump in the road, really got through to us. The seating position is, by the way, still very comfortable, but you know, with those sport seats you get a little bit more side support that helps you, especially in the corners. So overall, that's also really fine. As you can see here, you have enough power to accelerate from low RPMs also out. Then you can also switch to different driving modes. The Eco Pro mode helps you with sailing or coasting and saves you some fuel. For example, when you go off the throttle, it's recuperating in this mild hybrid system that the other car systems, you know, as for lights, AC and stuff, are using more of the car battery rather than using some more fuel. And also the throttle input is reduced just a little bit. However, when you go to the sport mode, that is exactly the opposite. Throttle input is increased. We better be safe with that here. Throttle input is increased. That's good for overtaking maneuvers. And also the gears are turned up higher, so you can get to higher RPMs before the car shifts automatically. The automatic transmission that is built in here is working flawlessly, seamless transitions when you drive calmly. At the same time, you can use the shifting pedals right here to shift up or down and have a little sportier approach. So you're always free of choice, and I would definitely recommend you to pick one of those automatic transmissions here. It's just good for comfort and for sporty riding too. You can keep both hands at the steering wheel all the time. That really helps you out. You can also take a look at the digital speedometer in the middle, but while driving it's really handy just to look at the front, at the head-up display. At the moment it's showing me the current speed and also the maximum speed I can drive. Let's see, 70 now, if that it's adapting. Yes, now it jumped from 90 to 70. So also showing me that when I maybe missed it somehow, that I've not really seen the sign. So that's also pretty helpful. Now we're getting to some more fun riding roads, but there's a truck in front of us. So I guess we'll wait just a second that we can have a little bit more fun. So let's go to the sport mode, and we have some gravel on the ground. Let's accelerate, see how that all-wheel drive plays out, because it's front plus rear-wheel drive on demand. Wow, that hooked up pretty well. Nice. That went pretty fast. And also some acceleration figure now. Let's say from 40 kilometers an hour. Let's hammer it in sport mode. Look, that's already 75 then. Wow. So that went pretty quick for this 2-liter 4-cylinder diesel. So acceleration figures will of course be, approximately the same when you have, for example, when you have around 230 horsepower with a petrol engine, something like that. Diesel engine, of course, where when you compare equal horsepower numbers, the diesel engine has more performance. And now some more fun in those winding corners here. Really a great car to enjoy. But again, also the X1 still is. So let's approach this one here. Of course, when you have the all-wheel drive, you do not really feel that is so much front-wheel drive focus, because some power is transported to the back anyway. But it's of course also not the feeling and with a rear-wheel driven car from BMW that is more pushing you instead of pulling you. By the way, now we're driving about 80 kilometers an hour when I'm at the straight. However, if you drive a little bit faster, we also had some 120 on the motorway, and that was perfectly fine, very stable also from the car. Sound insulation, let's say, it's not best in class, so I've experienced some better, but it's definitely at a good level, so no problem with that. Next to the head-up display, the other assistance systems, for example, the adaptive cruise control is working flawlessly. I really like the one from BMW, keeping you at ease on the motorway, but also safe, keeping the distance and stuff, so I really like that. So what do you think? hope you also had a little fun here together with us in the driving part. And now our conclusion for today, the BMW X2. For sure a unique design on the exterior. You get a compact SUV with a very sporty look. This is also the main differentiation versus the X1, for example. Well, the packages you have here, especially the M Sport X, I think you can also easily live with the base version and save some money because, you know, that is one of the main criticism points. It's a very, very expensive car. And so it's, you know, at least unless you have enough money, also wise just to leave it with some base specs, you know, to get a rather decent price. The interior, very well processed. So the days when BMW had really, you know, unworthy interiors seem to be gone. Really good in the build quality. Also, most functions easy to use. The infotainment system was a little bit complicated still from, you know, from the menu, how it's arranged. Great with the Alcantara seats we've seen here today. Well, you don't get it on all markets, but I have left my remarks to that one earlier. Overall, I think very well done in the interior. However, I feel the BMW X1 is a little bit more comfortable. And, well, also as for the room you have available, I would always say go for the X1. That would be my tip. Better price performance, a little bit more comfort, a little bit more room. This one here you really pick if you want it so much for the design. And driving dynamics, a little bit more agile. Depends then again on the suspension. To me, it was a little bit too rough with the M Sport suspension. So I think you should also not go for this one. Either the top adaptive one or the base suspension.
The Mercedes GLA. Starting here with the front, wow, even if those white color nuance here is more a little beige and rather cream, wow, it looks so shiny in the sun, doesn't it? The front grille has this crossover style with those gaps here, pretty nicely done. 2D Mercedes logo as the sensor is hidden behind it. Well, it has the autonomous emergency brake from standard equipment. I think that is very important for sure. But of course, optionally, you can get so many more assistance systems. A split here for the rear hood and the rest of the front part. But this one can easily be, you know, assembled and, you know, removed or replaced in case of a small crash, for example. Then with the facelift, you can now also get the LED headlight, which was also mounted here. Also with a nice, you know, welcoming light if you open the car and standing in the darkness. I have also gathered some shots when it was dark in the basement, and then you can see there's first this blue stripe, then just shortly you can see it on camera. In real sight you can see it a little bit, you know, a little bit longer when it comes to normal daytime running light. So overall it looks pretty impressive, nicely done. Surely a nice option, but of course it does cost optional money. 4.42 m or 14.5 the total length here, compact crossover, and you can see in the side profile it is basically an A-class that was put a little bit higher. Yes, I mean that's not bad at all, but there's not so much difference between A-class and GLA, we have to be honest about that. Rims here 18-inch, they come, for example, if you pick different trim levels automatically. There's Style, which is this vehicle, Urban and AMG with Urban and the AMG line. Then it comes already with 18-inch. Here they are optional, but I think quite fitting to the vehicle. The GLA also has those plastic wheel arches to stress the crossover style. Other than that, design line below the door handle, then rather narrow windows in the rear. They limit the overview from the inside just a little bit. Rather strong shoulders, and they already accentuate this rather sporty approach of this compact crossover. We'll of course talk more about that when we really drive the vehicle.
And here we go with the rear, which has a rather round scheme overall, so very round taillights, as you can see it right here. GLA 220 is the name of this very engine. Soon take a look at the engines as well. Then this chrome plate right here. And the lower part is defined by the crossover style, again with this matte gray. And they do not put fake exhaust tips. I think that's a good decision. Why would you actually do that? They just put the real exhaust below that. That's okay if you use those 4-cylinder engines. You know, by this window line, you can see you do lose some space in the trunk. And again, you know, this has design reasons, but we'll also check out how much room there is really left.
You can open the tailgate here with the key. There's also now a foot opening mechanism available since the facelift, but not built in this vehicle. Here you can still live with the trunk. You see it is somewhat limited in height, but still, I mean, a normal compact size. Pretty suitable for the groceries, and I've already put down the 1/3 of the 2/3 flipping of the rear seats. You can see how you can also then load things through. Top tethers at the back side of the seats. So let's take a first look inside. Here inside of the doors in the style trim level, a nice grey cloth inlet, then leatherette below that. Automatic window levers, memory seat control with 3 memory slots. That's coming quite handy. Then illuminated Mercedes-Benz entry cabin lower part. Here then a rather sporty cockpit, you can already see it. They have great seat surfaces. Here, for example, the style trim inside, a fabric, keeps you cool in summer and warm in winter, and leatherette on the outside for the visual purposes. Wow, visually great combination, also sustainable. They also get the full leatherette if you want something to wipe clean easy. And in the AMG line, or the true AMG models, they have also microfiber on the middle part and leatherette on the outside. That would also be possible. This one, by the way, the normal seat. There's also a sports seat available with more side support. Then steering wheel right here, also in a sporty style. All the gauges and vents, they also have this sporty style. Soft touch on the top of the dashboard here, so great processing quality. The only thing that is hard pack is, for example, here also with the middle console around the control knob button here. This could have been a little bit softer, and then I would be really totally satisfied with this interior. But again, I think you can already rate it very well. And let's get inside. The entry is a little easier than with the A-Class because it sits a little bit higher. That is one advantage for sure. Also, the seating position is a little bit more upright than. The seats in general are very comfortable. I really like those, not only the surface, also the form. You can also have the electric controls. It's on the inside of the doors. You can also lengthen the seating area manually. Good idea for tall drivers. And steering wheel can be adjusted manually. Very far away. So this is also one of the advantages. You can really adjust to your position. That is, very easily done. The view to the front is somewhat limited from the, from the view there.
Headroom wise, there's no panoramic roof here. You can go for it optional. This one is this headroom you have still left when you are 1.86 or 6'1". So definitely good result also for tall drivers. Well, to the A-pillar it gets a little bit close, but usually, well, when are you leaning so close to the door? It's not happening that often, I think, at least. Again, you know, to show you how I control seats is here a little bit harder because the controls are not here. The seats just the lumbar support. They're all here, and then you can, you know, move the seat forward or the back part of the seat. But when you have the door closed, it's actually a good control where you don't have to touch in the lower part. You can also see it, and also as those controls basically form a seating area, you can always see what you are actually controlling at the very moment. So the interior overview, as we can see it here. The dashboard is nicely covered in this leatherette style, I would call it. It's soft. Then here is a sporty decor right there, you know, with a special structure. You know, very prominent are also all the vents right there. This is the way you close it. This way you open it, and then the air comes out. Here, open, closed. You can do it with all of those. A very classic one here with these you know, numbers, CD slot. This one will be left out with the next generation, I guess. And then seat heating, for example, in the lower part, and the temperature unit is placed very, very low. If you leave it on auto mode all the way, no problem. But if you control it, especially by driving, you have to look down pretty low, or maybe you keep on driving and you just do it automatically when you know the car, but I think it's placed in general very low. Steering wheel is quite compact, also, you know, with perforated sides right there. Very well in control you are, but you can see there's not so much, you know, panoramic view to the front. Again, a rather sporty cockpit layout, definitely, as you can see it here from the position. Then there's 7-inch or 8-inch, as we can see here now, for the screen. This one is the optional one that is available since the facelift, a little bit wider. It looks a little bit attached still, doesn't it? Those ones, by the way, the performance gauges that turn up the kilowatt output power and newton meters of torque. I will also turn it on when we drive the vehicle. Soon more infos to that infotainment system. And the glove box, well, actually standard style. In the lower part here we have, you know, some small storage space, 12-volt power supply. In front of that there's some more bigger boxes, and in the other lower part then here we got 2 beverage holders. You can also remove this part if you like, so they're not really adaptive. And this then is the you know, standard controlling knob for the infotainment system. Press and turn, and armrest. Can put it up, some space below there, and 2 USB ports. And the instruments, rather classic, left speed, right RPM. In the middle one you have a small digital screen where you have, for example, consumption info, digital speedometer, or also some basic GPS info when the destination mode is running. So now to the infotainment system. If it appears to be flickering in a way, by the way, that's just on camera then. So the most important functions, truly the 360-degree camera, if you like to order one. Then you have this fake drone view from above, and also a normal view camera. And it also looks to the front if you like, so you can also switch it around. Different views are possible. It is a very good system and great resolution. Then the normal system is not that intuitive. Here for the GPS, for example, it's actually okay, not responding that fast. Well, it's, I would say, mediocre. Okay. Radio, media, telephone you can connect via Bluetooth. That's one possibility. Or you can put in the cable. Then you also here with the bigger infotainment system have the Apple CarPlay option. So that's also possible, and it reacts also quite fast. It's also a good solution then. Now to the rear compartment. The door does not open that wide, so it's not that easy to get in. And well, knee room wise, there's a gap on the inside of the seat. I could very well use it. or let's say better, when the seat would be a little bit higher. So if a tall person is driving, you have to be aware you should put the seat a little bit higher, then you can easier use this gap. But in the compact segment, knee room wise, not exactly the best result. This is not a strength of this vehicle. Headroom wise, it's still okay. I can put actually, you know, something above my head still. This works. With the panoramic roof, maybe not too good. In general, the seating position in the rear is a little bit cramped. Also, you know, the angle of my knees and stuff. So again, not the best of this vehicle. But what is great that we also have the same design with the very interesting cloth, also with some stamping details here on the seats. It is also, you know, very durable, by the way, the inside part here. Isofix on the outside of the seats, and you can, well, you have to flip the seats from here, 2/3, 1/3 split. I've shown you that already, how it looks like from the rear. Unfortunately, there's no real possibility to do it from the rear unless you demount the top cover from the trunk. Then it would be easier actually from the rear, but usually you just go around and, you know, make it from here then. And engines, well, there are so many horsepower figures, it would actually bring this view to an explosion. Well, but let me tell you the displacement figures. Here in the petrol engine, 1.6 liter or a 2 liter one. Turbo, of course. This one is also 2 liter displacement here, the 220 with 180 horsepower. And diesels are 1.5 liter of displacement or 2.1 liter. And then so many different horsepower figures available. This one here also with 4MATIC all-wheel drive. You won't really realize it when driving it. It's basically front plus rear drive on demand, so the torque is distributed. Of course, handy in winter times. This one here, this configuration is also only available with that, also together with a 7-speed DCT dual clutch transmission. So welcome to the driving part, and we start using the dynamic select, which is built in here. We go to the sport mode. Also we can just start the engine on a button to remove the start-stop function. And with the sport mode we can accelerate a little bit better. This was just putting the throttle halfway through, and you see that this 4-cylinder engine has quite a good performance. 7.1 seconds to 100 kilometers in this GLA 220 spec. Also when going on the motorway now. We also have a blind spot monitor among the optional assistance system. You know, the autonomous emergency brake is standard, that's very good. Then there's a red triangle there. This one is an option. You see here they have the setup that it actually appears quite late if you compare it to other models. Let's go to the middle part here. So, you know, from a lot of Volkswagen AG vehicles, it appears very early. And we've seen the other example with the Peugeot 3008, for example, where it appears only in a second. We have it in the blind spot mirror. And here it's approximately the same, so they have thought they make a setup here where it appears relatively late, not a pre-warning basically, but just saying this is now the point where it is really in the blind spot. So you can argue pro and con both of the systems for sure. So on the motorway, I must say the sound insulation is not that good. It is on a basically good level, but it is not super, it's not way ahead of the compact competitors, for example. So we have in some segments where Mercedes is ahead of the competition. Here in the compact segment, they are not. If you're driving a little bit faster also, the car still reacts very well. So the steering is not too hard on the one hand, but feels very, very natural. That's good. Here in the sport mode, the throttle input is a little bit better. Or earlier. Suspension, if you have the adaptive suspension, it also changes a little bit of the suspension. The difference, however, going now back to the comfort mode when we're going rather to the city driving,
Well, you can easily go with the standard suspension. You don't have to pay the extra amount of money to get the optional suspension. It's not really needed. If you want a little wider span between normal and sport, then you could go for this adaptive sports suspension. And well, again, it's nice to have, but not really a must-have, which we have in here. So at lower speeds or when standing still, this engine here is very silent. Being in the comfort mode, we also keep it rather at low RPM. The dual clutch transmission, 7-speed DCT, which has been revised and put in here, does a very good job. You hardly feel this shifting transition. Only when you're on the sport mode, then those transitions are more recognizable. Here again, you see they are a little bit more progressive steerings, that's for sure. But this one here again feels very natural, and you have actually a feedback from any point of angle, so there's no dead angle or something. Overall, definitely a pleasing figure. On the steering wheel, you do control, for example, you know, when I want to check the consumption when I'm driving, press the up arrow up, or go down again to the current speed. By the way, consumption 8.5 liters in 100 kilometers for my test riding here so far. Yeah, that's too much. That's definitely too much for a compact vehicle. And as powerful as the engine is, and as refined it is, so silent really when we're going slower now, and even powerful in the higher speed region, it does consume too much fuel. And I mean, wind drag wise, it is not too different from a Mercedes A-Class if you look at it at the vehicle, and also driving wise, by the way. If I would close the eyes and someone would ask me, are you driving a Mercedes A-Class or are you driving a GLA? I would be like, I don't know. So it doesn't make too much of a difference. Yes, you do sit a little bit higher, but as the ride itself is still really sporty, you don't recognize so much difference. And I think that's also one of the main characteristics when driving the Mercedes GLA, even in the normal versions. It is rather set on a very sporty ride. You mean it's not too high from the seating position, and from the viewpoint, also the view to the front is not this panoramic view to the front, rather sporty. Also, if you think about other smaller or compact crossovers or SUVs, they tend to focus a little bit more on the comfort, on more the high SUV, soft riding style. And this one here still has the very sporty approach. So again, if you then decide between different competitors, not about good or bad, it's really about what you like to have. So if you rather prefer this sporty approach, then you just ride with this one. I've also mounted those sport gauges here. They can see the Newton meter and kilowatt power output of the vehicle. Well, I usually don't use that while driving, just for show purposes now for you. At lower speeds, by the way, sound insulation is quite fine. But as I said again, I have had compact cars that are a little bit more silent. In general, it gives you a very controlled and cozy feeling, and more a sports crossover, that's for sure. I can just stress it again. And soon we get on the motorway ride once more. Well, the driving modes, I would rather use comfort or sport mode, something between, usually not. Actually, you can also stay in sports mode all the time. It's also possible, because if you want to take a maneuver to overtake on the motorway, I can soon show you that too. Then you can also use the shifting pedals. That is also possible. Seating wise, I found it very comfortable. As I said earlier, you can also adjust those seats very well, also with the mirroring function. Here, lane change, you see I don't have to turn so much on the steering wheel, and wow, how well the car reacts. I do imagine driving the GLA 45, the AMG, at some point with the launch. I think it was 2014. and that one of course was way sportier than, even stiffer. But I think here it's still a good compromise, you know, between driving comfort and a sporty ride. If I think about the AMG version, then you really have to be, you know, super keen on that stiff ride, and because it does cost you some everyday driving comfort for sure. Here then, rather flawless ride, pushing the throttle together with the suspension and overall quality of the ride. It is still a very effortless ride, and for sure one of the most exclusive rides you can have for a compact vehicle. But of course, as I said earlier, it also comes at a price. So not everyone wants to buy a compact vehicle when it goes into like 40,000–50,000 euros regions. That is, you know, really intense. So let's see something more about the acceleration when I really floor the throttle. So I'll drop to 70 kilometers an hour. Well, let's say 75, and then I floor the throttle. Let's see also in comfort mode how it reacts. Let's go. Plop, 100. Wow. Wow. That's really something from that four-cylinder engine, right? So you see that even with the, you know, GLA 220 petrol, you really get some power under the hood. Wow, that's really impressive. And again, for example, when I'm switching to comfort, now in the 7th gear of the dual clutch transmission, I can just click the pedal once or twice, 5th gear, turn up the RPM, and then I can, you know, I'm more ready for the next overtaking maneuver. Holding the right pedal, and then you can go back to the normal D mode. Pushing up the lever next to or below the indicators, then you are in a Distronic Plus mode. If you have equipped the vehicle, which is the case right here, is really my favorite system for the ACC. Keeps the distance, the distance so precisely. You can also set how the distance is being kept, and it also reduces the speed until 0 together with the automatic transmission, so you can really trust on that system. I really like it. It gives you so much more comfort, and I just concentrate on turning the wheel, the steering wheel under here, and that's about it. And also in traffic, for example, when it comes to a standstill, it doesn't have this, you know, the same assist. Let's get off the motorway here. It doesn't have, oh, sorry. Here again, I'll see how agile, wow, how agile the car is, although it's crossover. So effortless, a lot of fun to drive this vehicle, really, a lot of sporty fun. Yeah, about this traffic jam assist, it doesn't realize that the cars are starting, it goes on its own, but then you just pull the, you know, the lever, the ACC lever once towards you, and then the car knows, you know, want to keep driving, you don't have to do anything with the pedal or something below with your foot. This would be then the command for the Distronic Plus to say, you know, you can keep going again. So that's actually coming quite handy also when being in traffic. So again, really very solid performance from this vehicle, sporty orientation, a lot of driving fun. For sure, if you like the sporty rides, one of the most fun sporty vehicles. And again, it does not make the biggest difference if you're now having an A-Class or the GLA. They are both quite similar. It's more about styling and, yeah, a little difference with getting in and out, so it's easier. If I could choose freely, yeah, I mean, the GLA is a little bit more expensive, but if money wouldn't play a role, I would still probably go for the GLA because it gives me a little bit more comfort and easy get in and out. And I also don't mind this somewhat crossover style. So don't necessarily think that the A-Class is super more beautiful than this one here. Of course, it's totally up to you, you know how you think that. So I think that you definitely have done a good job with here, you know, with all the pros and cons we mentioned, and also some more countryside driving. You can really relax. Now when I'm driving 55 kilometers an hour with the cruise control set on, it feels so slow. You know, when you went on the motorway before, that's always very dangerous, and then you get into a slower area, you start to get speeding because it feels so much slower than before. Maybe last remark to the overview, due to the design approach they do have here, yeah, you know, you don't have the best overview. Again, small windows, basically on every side, especially to the rear side. This area is not too good. The only advantage you have, it's still a hatch vehicle, so the view to the direct rear, if you look to the rear mirror, they can see actually pretty well what's behind you. So I think we have covered different aspects here. Fun car to drive. And we'll see you soon, very, very soon, in our final conclusion. And now to our conclusion, Mercedes GLA. So overall, a very, very good vehicle, no doubt about that. In the compact crossover class, this one here is rather a very sporty approach. Even in those, let's say, standard or base models, it has a very attractive Mercedes exterior for sure, good quality in the interior, very nice and attractive seating options as we shown you earlier in different respects. Well, the offering of space inside could be a little better, that's not best in class for sure. So at some point the design also plays a role, that is also, you know, a limiting factor. Driving wise, it's a very sporty approach, it's so much fun to ride this vehicle. Driving wise, also not so much difference to the normal Mercedes A-Class, still such a sporty ride, a lot of fun, that's for sure. For some, maybe even too stiff if you more seek a high cross or high SUV, soft riding style, but that's of course up to you what you want. So overall, a very good car, but then again, well, the only thing I could complain is the price. It's very, very expensive. So I would only go for it if you really get a very good deal for it. So look forward to your feedback now. The all-new Volvo XC40, this new compact or rather small SUV. Today in our full review on Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews and your #1 community to discuss cars with Thomas. A detailed look on the exterior here in the R design today, the sporty variant, the interior and of course the driving experience today with the T5 petrol engine. Everything you need to know about this car, I can promise you this will be the best review of this car as always on Autogefühl. Let's go in full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! This car is not a real sibling to the XC90 or XC60. Those ones are siblings. This one here sits on a new so-called CMA architecture and is basically smaller. And also the other new small Volvos will follow on this architecture. In the front you have the Thor's Hammer LED light, but only if you pick the LED light package seen from the base version, or if you have the R design pack, which we have here today on our test vehicle, then the LED Thor's Hammer light is included.
Also, this front grille then in the Audi design has this black glossy dot structure, so it looks a little bit stronger and also stronger with the contrast here in the lower part. Of course, even more contrasting to the white exterior color we have. 4 meters 42 or 14 foot 5 is the total length. So yes, this is way shorter than the XC60, for example, which is for a compact SUV really long. And this one here more attacks in this surging smaller SUV segment. 17 inch it starts with the rims, then 18 inch with Momentum or Audi design trim. This one the optional 19 inch, 20 would be the maximum. Well, the general perspective, in the Audi design you also get this contrasting roof here in black, also black frames around the mirror, around the windows. The mirror caps here also in black. And what we can see general from the design is that we have a big gap right here for the design. Then this crossover look with the black plastic in the lower part. Some small details like this rubber Swedish flag. I wonder how long this will last. I hope very long. And in the rear, characteristic design feature, raising line here from the window, and exactly in the opposite direction, again another design line right there. So it has some, let's say, squarish elements here. And an R design badge here in our variant for today. What do you think about the design? So the side profile is really unique for this vehicle. In the rear, it pretty much looks like the bigger brothers of the brand, especially here with those vertical drawn taillights. Then we have the T5 logo for the engine and an R design logo right here. Then the crossover look with the plastic look in the lower part and fake exhaust tips alert. This one here all fake, the rear one's smaller inside. We've been discussing that quite a lot of times, and some don't care, but some think this is really a no-go. What do you think? So you can open the trunk here with the side of the car key, or way down below that's pretty low. And the car was all clean, but in the rear this white color always gets dirty pretty quickly. Then a very well usable luggage area. Also interesting that below you can put some more stuff, and also a nice solution for that one here, because you can put it up like this, and maybe if you want to have something standing upright that could help, or even behind that. So you have, you know, some this is here another hanger, for example, for a bag, also possible. And then around the corner there are two buttons where I can let the seats flip like this. Really nice, and see all flat here. Hey, that's my new new indicator here. Ski hatch would also be possible. Top tether at the rear, Isofix in the front. So I think also considering the size, A+ for the luggage area. And here you can see a little bit of luggage inside, that you have a better understanding of how big the cargo area is. And let's see the child safety test. Yeah, it's not really that sensitive, but I think, you know, you will be hurt a little bit, but at least it works so that it jumps back again. Let's get inside, and pretty solid door handles. Also good closing sound. Then inside of the doors, it's a new concept, really interesting. Here also with orange contrast color with felt. So that's a rather, you know, let's say rough fabric material, but I think it's something different. Some don't like it, some do like it. What about you? Then also this is interesting, it's a soft material, soft plastic. It also has a structure, so overall it's really worthy, so it looks like high quality. Then we got this dot design. You cannot really feel them, but it's just more visual part. Memory seat function here also for electric seats. Press M, then the 1, then you have it saved. The Harman Kardon sound system, by the way, is quite nice, but not comparable to the one we have in the bigger Volvo cars. They have more speakers and the sound system has this orchestra sound. We do not have it here. Then the first look at the interior. The base model would come with fabric seats as well, these in Germany. Then in the higher trims, the only solution to avoid animal skin fully is this R-design seat. This is a little bit sportier, stronger in the shoulder part. You can also lengthen it manually in the lower part. And this one has microfiber on the inside. My information goes so far that this velour on the inside is not from animal origin, but some parts of the outside. They always mix it around, no one really knows. It's hard to get the real information of that. Then steering wheel, R-design, and I can also get it inside with the shoe tab. And it's really comfortable with a high seating position, so it feels like a full-grown SUV already, although it's not that long. So it's not this, crossover style that you sit very low and have some SUV design elements. It already has a real SUV seating position, and I would also expect that of an SUV. The seats in general, as we know from Volvo, very comfortable. You can control it in all the ways. Let's see, let me start. Yeah, there it is. Got the electric control now, front and back. Also the back part of the seats. It's really easy to control. In the lower part here, electric lumbar support. Here, as I said, it's a manual for the lengthening of the leg area in the front. The steering wheel looks a little bit asymmetrical. It looks a little bit weird, but I'm really glad what they did. First of all, this new airbag cover looks more premium, and here the buttons here, they feel better. It's not this glossy black anymore, like with the bigger models, XC60, XC90, also the V90, for example, S90. This is a matte black now. So you only have the glossy black around the infotainment system. Everything else is in matte black, and I really like that. You can adjust the steering wheel, but be careful. The mechanism below is really strong. Maybe you also heard that. So you can put it like this. This works really smoothly, but again, pay attention when releasing this lever down to the steering wheel. The first time I did it, I really hurt my hand because it's so strongly attached. And just use your one thumb below that and then just pull downwards. And then, well, you see how much strength is behind it. So please pay attention not to squish your fingers right there. And digital instruments, all digital. We already know them from other Volvo models. It's nice because you can have the GPS in the middle part then, and the other instruments right and left. Starting the engine now, you can see it. It's not that fast, a digital speedometer. Analog one is more accurate, I would say, but this one here gives you a little bit more flexibility. Interior overview, I think it's really interesting that it also mirrors the exterior design with those squircle. The square and circle is a squircle. This squircle dimensions here. Then again, this dot design, especially here, also reflects the front grille. Soft touch also for the top dashboard. I think a great build quality. Sometimes I have even the impression it's a better build quality than one of the bigger and more expensive models. Really astonishing. The R-design steering wheel again with the perforated sides, R-design logo at the lower part. Again, matte here, matte black also around the only buttons we can see here. I think it's also good because the glossy black always collects so much fingerprints, like here. Fingerprint collector, well, my fingers are usually pretty dry, so I don't leave so many fingerprints. Good for crime scenes, But then again, I think the matte black is really better. It looks somehow a little bit worthier, a little bit cooler, for sure. A big middle console also. We'll soon take a detailed look at that. They have paid attention to offer you more storage spaces overall. 9-inch screen, you get that standard. Air conditioning and Bluetooth is also standard. Here you can already see I also have the cable connection with the Apple CarPlay. Soon a more detailed feature to this infotainment screen. And well, the glove box is very small, all stuffed full already right there. So with every Volvo now there comes this this tissue, and it has the symbol 2 sec, and that means hold it 2 sec with the button right here. And then this is the cleaning mode, and there's microfiber on the inside, and then you can clean it around. And you will have to do that quite often, at least if you want to have it in a proper look. Here the Apple CarPlay to the home screen, but you can also theoretically connect to Bluetooth still. This is the main menu. Then you can always access the top part for some settings. Scrolling left, this is, for example, if you want to access the camera. If I turn on the car, it will also be available. There it is, camera system with a great resolution, this fake drone view from above. And I can also switch to certain cameras, for example here to the front, again great resolution, or also automatically to the back camera when I put in the reverse gear. There it is. So I think a very great solution they have found here. I could also do an attack on Michel now, when he's sitting here. We can test that. It still does flip the rear head restraints, although we have quite often criticized it should not be doing that when someone is sitting on the seat in the rear. There should be a sensor for that, but they haven't solved that yet. And on the right side you can go to the settings for the sound system, for example. So, well, you have to learn the system a little bit, but after a while you get along with it and you can also very well use it. Then also the GPS as the last showing you. See right here, you can make it a little bit bigger. We're around Bavaria today, and then you can also scroll in and out. So overall, I think we are satisfied with the infotainment system. Also in this vertical view, you can see better on the map. Again, you should watch Autogefühl to know that you can access like this, for example, for the camera and stuff. If you know some of the secrets there, then it's fine. The temperature can be accessed in the lower area, also for the seat heating. You know, you don't have a separate knob, and you can control it like this, or press it here, or plus minus. For a screen solution, it's quite easily done. But then I think I'm a little bit old school when I say I like to have knobs when driving. When you're standing still, it's no problem here, but when driving, it's quite often handy to control it with a knob as well. So this lower area is actually quite spacious. You have the QI symbol here. This is for inductive charging. You can optionally have that if you have a phone which is suitable for that. Other than that, you have two USB slots. I can, for example, put a USB stick here, or the cable, then also for the smartphone mirroring function. You can put a couple of smartphones in the front there. Also here it would be possible to put it right in there. Then the cup holders are adaptive. Nice solution also with this dot design on the rubber pad on the inside. The shifting lever for the automatic gearbox is really short. You just do it like this, pretty easy solution. Electric handbrake. Then there's a small storage space right there. Or then the armrest here. Well, this is an interesting solution, for example, for tissues. A little bit squeezed in there. But then you can also remove this whole part. So this is possible. When I put this one out, then you can see the full scale. And well, I think this vehicle really offers some flexible solutions already here in the front. Let's get in the rear compartment. I'm really looking forward to that. And I've left the seat as I would be driving as a tall driver, 1m86 or 6'1", and wow. And this isn't really way different in the XC60, for example. Also headroom-wise, there's enough room still left, although we already have the panoramic roof mounted here. So this new architecture seems to offer a lot of room, especially for the rear passengers. And you have an upright seating position, so it's very comfortable here. For 4 adults, no problem. It's also allowed with a 5th person here. Of course, you have somewhat the middle tunnel here, but it's still quite soft in the middle. I have enough room, so it is basically set up for 4 adults, but you can also travel short distances with 5 adults. Also nice that you have the microfiber here on the inside on the rear seats with the R-Design too. Then we have the middle armrests, also here with adaptive cup holders. And in the lower part here, I'm not sure why I've just put a normal USB plug, but this is USB-C, this port here. So you also need the according cable for that if you want to use it. And last but not least, very interesting, you can also flip the seats from here, and then as soon as I access it here, you see that the head restraint here also flips down. That's what's happening when you also press it in the front infotainment system. And you can see it again how it folds flat. And from here you can also, for example, open the ski hatch if you like. And you have to open the like this, and then open the armrest again, and you can reach through here. This here. Well, they have done it that they have the cover right here for this middle head restraints. You can then fold up like this. Also interesting solution. So again, also for the rear compartment here, I think they've done a very good job. And it proves once more that this seems to be, from a lot of aspects, the best price performance Volvo. So what do we have here is a 2-liter 4-cylinder, 250 horsepower approximately, and all-wheel drive T5. There's also the T3 available. That one will then be a 3-cylinder, 1.5 liter with about 160 horsepower, front-wheel drive, and also manual transmission. This one here, automatic transmission. And last but not least, there's also a 2-liter 4-cylinder diesel available with 190 horsepower. Well, interesting, so far Volvo has reduced themselves to those 2-liter 4-cylinder engines. But now with this vehicle here, as it's a smaller car, also a new entry-level 3-cylinder engine. So this one here is the rather known common engine, and we're also looking forward to a later stage to test the new small engine. So welcome to the driving part. Let's first take a look at the acceleration, and we do some, let's say 30 to 80 or something, and just hammer it. But we're going to the dynamic mode to have the maximum output. Let's see, and go. There it is. Wow, that is some performance. Even sounds quite nice engine-wise, very sporty. And indeed, the XC40, being the smallest SUV yet from Volvo, feels somewhat sportier also in the dynamic handling. Also the R-Design version we're having here is a little bit stiffer than, and well, feels really good. It's also fun to drive. I think that's the biggest difference. The XC60 and XC90 are very comfortable to drive. This one here too. But this one here clearly more fun to drive than the bigger counterparts. As for the driving modes, well, dynamic mode turns up the gears higher, shifts down earlier again. Here when going up the hill, that's pretty useful. At the same time, you can always just use the shifting pedals here at the steering wheel. It sounds really quite sporty indeed. And also, you know, getting pulled and pushed at the same time, because when you apply so much throttle, also the rear wheels are spinning with you in the T5 petrol engine. Driving modes, usually you take just comfort, then car gets calmer, shifts up a gear. You just use that in your everyday driving. Or you can also use the eco mode. And that one is basically comparable with the comfort mode. It's just that the throttle input is reduced a little bit, and also the coasting or sailing function is enhanced. So when you're driving uphill, it doesn't really matter, but as soon as you're going a little bit downhill, or if you're not applying so much throttle, then the car, will soon show you that, will go into this mode where it's just running freely, not consuming any fuel. And that, of course, saves you fuel on the long-term run. So now above the peak of the hill, now I'm letting go of throttle, and it also says here coasting ready in the instruments. And when you're below that, it's basically working. As soon as I go to the throttle again, it goes above that threshold. Again, the Volvo engines still consume too much fuel. That's usually always the case. I'll also tell you soon more on the motorway, but depending on how you drive, it's, you know, 8 is an absolute minimum, but more realistic is more about 9 liters on 100 kilometers an hour. 9 liters on 100 kilometers. If you want to know what's an MPG, 9 liters / 100 km in MPG, or maybe even above that if you drive in the city primarily. I think the main or key finding here on countryside roads is it's really fun and agile to drive, so that works with this new smaller architecture, and at the same time you don't lose too much comfort, at least here in the front for driver and co-driver. So that might be a reason even, you know, maybe even to step down a segment. As one other important thing is, of course, you don't have so much car around you, and that also reduces stress. Here at the moment it's not such a big factor, but when you're in narrow cities, then you get along with this car easier because it's just smaller, you know. You can find better parking spots than with the XC60 or XC90 and so on. And now some off-road riding for you in the snow. We also have the off-road driving mode that activates, for example, the hill descent control, and also, you know, changes some characteristics with the all-wheel drive, more transport to the back wheels and stuff. And so we can, for example, also test this slide uphill, and we just stand still and see how the car handles that here on snow and ice then. And so here it's some wheel spin, but then the all-wheel drive distributed to the right wheels where we have traction, and we easily get up the hill. First we have the ESC activated. See here, for example, also the hill descent control sets in. I also have a small symbol there. I'm not braking. Hill descent control is active. Automatically goes down the hill for me. So that's really helpful then when off-road driving, to give you even more control so that the car do that stuff. So and then we can also drive a little bit faster on a small handling parcours. The off-road mode only available at really low speeds, and even if I apply a little bit too much throttle, the ESC, electronic stability control, really keeps me in the lane. So it's not so much you can do wrong besides just driving too fast, you know, when the laws of physics just apply. So the car really gives me a very safe feeling, and it's really a little bit like driving on rails. And I mean, even if I want to exceed the perimeter a little bit, let's try that and see what the car does. For example, here, getting too much on the throttle. That was a very slippery point now. That's, you know, where physics end, so you have to be aware of that. Here now, next corner. So the off-road mode already draws back the stability control a little bit, that you have some more wheel spin, then this one is possible. So because sometimes when you're driving off-road, you need a little wheel spin. What is interesting, so you see when I'm driving too fast, the car changes back to the normal comfort mode. Now when I want to induce a drift, car, see here, did you hear that? The brake was really applied a lot. So this car in normal mode, you cannot really drift it. Then there's the ESC Sport mode, which can be accessed when you know, from the main menu, turn it a little bit to the left side. And the ESC Sport mode then gives me a little bit more room to play around with the vehicle. So that's more fun, but of course at the same time, in a way, unsafer. So also not recommended to use it on you know, real road surfaces. So if I want to induce the drift, then now here, see I can do a little bit more, but it is somewhat limited still. So it's still just the ESC Sport mode, and I mean this car is also not meant to be drifted around in a way like this. Here we can play a little bit. It's also a lot of fun, and there again the effect plays a role that this car has a short wheelbase and is general really fun to drive, and it's the same for this small snow parcours right here. But again, also in the ESC Sport mode, I mean it's a mainly front-wheel driven car, also some power to the rear wheels then of course with the all-wheel drive we have here in the T5. but the focus is still on remaining control of the vehicle. But again, surely always with a lot of fun here in the snow. Yeah, when I really force the issue now, then I can turn the car around, but I really have to work that. So, hope you enjoyed this part here too. And now to some motorway driving with the all-new XC40 2-liter 4-cylinder with 250 horsepower and all-wheel drive. So front plus rear is the all-wheel drive setup we have here. Of course, there's also just a front-wheel drive version as a base model with manual hand drive. Here today with the automatic transmission with the higher engine. So, and you know, when cruising on the motorway, what is really interesting? Well, you have the adaptive cruise control with the optional. You can also get the so-called pilot assist. That is this semi-autonomous function. So it's not meant to lift your hands off the steering wheel, but you can theoretically do it. I mean, just for testing purposes. Again, it's not meant to. It somewhat keeps you in the lane, but you're still responsible. Here, when it sees the lines left and right, it's working. You see it's really keeping the lane, but it's more really to help you. I've done that with the XC60 in slower speed traffic. Then you could, for example, do it. I mean, if you're rolling with about 15 kilometers an hour, that's okay then, you know. But otherwise, after a few seconds, the car is also warning you, please keep your hands at the steering wheel, which is actually also correct. So this pilot assist works up to a speed of 130 kilometers an hour. The ACC, Adaptive Cruise Control, also further. However, you've maybe recently also read some articles about Tesla and the Volvo ACC system that it works to keep the distance to moving objects, but not to objects that are standing still, which is rather the task of the autonomous emergency brake at lower speeds, which is also standard equipment in this one. So the AEB, autonomous emergency brake, that one is standard equipment. The ACC and also the pilot assist, that is optional. So I'm also having the GPS info in the center display. That is quite helpful. So even if I don't see the GPS in the middle here, in the big one, I can still see it in my cockpit. And also I don't have to, you know, move my eyes that far away from it. So it's actually quite helpful. The car is indeed silent, so especially, you know, as SUVs are standing more against the wind, this is really doing a great job. So I think I don't have to raise my voice at all, and we're driving about 100 kilometers an hour at the moment. So that's really well done, like that. Also taking this cruise control now again here. You can switch it around if you want just the adaptive cruise control or the pilot assist, because sometimes it can also be a little bit annoying. So from time to time I just put the normal ACC. I would put the pilot assist indeed just in traffic situations. The steering is, by the way, very light. But it's, you know, reducing the strength you need to apply, especially when parking in and out. The car is really agile to handle at lower speeds in the basement garage and stuff. That's super easy, and probably the Volvo that is best to handle as for those everyday driving situations. Here on, you know, a little bit higher speeds, when doing some slalom here at 100 kilometers an hour, the car is still somewhat stable. It doesn't have the super sporty ride, but since most of the other Volvo models are even more set on a rather comfortable, unsporty ride, which is not bad, just different target group. This one here, that's also what they aim for, feels a little bit sportier. Also because it's, you know, just shorter and sits on this very new platform. Overall, pretty convincing ride, and also comfort-wise, when you drive also a longer time, you know, we have, as I explained earlier, those R-designed sport seats here today. They do a pretty good job in the long-term comfort, so I'm satisfied with it. we expected from Volvo seats. Traditionally, they are usually very well done. Besides, you know, the abundant use of leather they still have in their program. But from a seat form, really superb. So it's not the case that you have less comfort in an XC40 than in the XC60, for example, in the front. So you can also save money, just go for this one. This is also a little bit more modern car. And unless you really need the room in the back with the XC60 or XC90 even. So what about consumption? Because, you know, the minimum consumption here, cruise control, just setting it to a certain speed, not so many speed changes. So what has been applied there? Let's see, there it is, yeah. So at the moment it says about 9 liters on 1 kilometers. We'll keep you up to date if that's changing a lot. By the way, here the GPS commands, I like it usually when the GPS command comes and then I just turn down the volume and then you also don't hear anything about it anymore. That's not the case here. You can turn it down, then at the moment it shuts, but the next voice command is always at the minimum sound volume. You have to deactivate it completely over the GPS menu here, that it's possible. Actually, well, it is actually says mute. That's strange. Well, let's see. It says mute here. So, although mute, obviously the car seems to define mute as not completely gone, but just on a little sound level. That's pretty annoying from the system, I have to say. And I think in the last Volvos it worked when you put mute, that it's actually mute, and it says here mute. I don't know. By the way, also this, you maybe have seen the red warning triangle in the front of the digital cockpit. That one is warning the front hood would be open, which is not the case, but the sensor is somehow malfunctional when closing the hood. So it says it would be open, but it's not. This can sometimes happen when, you know, around those areas where the hood is closed, too much grease has been applied, that the electronic contacts are blocked by this grease. So they have to be cleaned. And if such a thing happens to you, ask your dealer the next workshop for that. That should actually help. Yeah, and now when getting to the slower in the city, the car handles really exceptionally well. The steering, as I said, is really light again, so you don't have the most natural feeling, but it is still somewhat direct, so not too loose. Overall, if you like rather soft steerings, but still want to somewhat a sporty control without applying too much pressure, that's also perfectly fine. So, you know, from all the driving aspects so far, this is really convincing. And again, it is for a small SUV a very expensive bargain. But then again, if you compare the other Volvo models, they're even more expensive. And now to our conclusion for today, Volvo XC40. First of all, talking about prices, this one here starts, German reference price, 30,000 euros, and then when you put the R design package and also the bigger engine, about 50,000. That's of course very expensive for a rather small SUV. Then again, with the new 3-cylinder engine, and if you rather pick a low trim, you can really score a good deal for a premium SUV when you keep it low. But then again, with a lot of extras really exceeding the prices. So my advice, as usual, is don't go for the highest spec version if you want a better price performance deal. In general, the exterior is somewhat fresh for sure. It's a little bit different than the other recent Volvo designs. In the front pretty similar, but especially the side profile is different. And I think, why not? Also in the interior we find new solutions, and I already have to say that the interior here is more pleasing to me than one of the bigger, more expensive models. Really some nice solutions. Of course we need also more alternatives to animal skin here, especially in the higher trims, since Volvo especially wants to be a very sustainable brand. Then driving-wise, also surprisingly dynamic, that the car is smaller, has a smaller wheelbase, also really helping. It is a lot of fun to drive. To me, the biggest difference to the bigger SUVs, with this one you do have more driving fun. So you just can ask yourself, do you need the more of room you have in the back, on the back seats and also in the trunk with the bigger SUV models? Other than that, the comfort is also very well given here, one of the key Volvo features. that you also, especially in the front, have a lot of driving comfort, although you have a little sportier approach. And of course, as always, a lot of driving safety systems already included for the Volvo. That is also one of the key elements. Overall, I think it's probably, especially if you don't pick the highest spec, I think the best price performance Volvo there is at the moment from the new models now. Or what do you think?
And now to our conclusion for today with those 4 premium compact SUVs. So my order would start with the Audi Q3 because although this is the car I have the least emotional bond to, it is somehow on the factual side to me the best of those vehicles at the moment, because on the exterior you have a fresh but somehow timeless design, a rather rectangular design. On the interior it's a very clean setup, everything is very well to use, and you also have a lot of room on the interior. The car is really flexible, the package is better than the previous generation, and also the build quality is superb. Also the driving is basically flawless in this vehicle. It has a dynamic ride and already you feel, let's say, big enough in this SUV, so you don't need a segment above necessarily. I think from all the factual side, Audi really managed to put up a very, very good all-new generation of the Q3. Then my second pick would be the BMW X2 or also the X1. I mentioned that initially, basically both vehicles are pretty much alike. And the X1, of course, is a little bit more versatile as for the trunk area especially. The X2, both and the X1 are rather a little bit more crossover-ish, so they don't offer that big high SUV feeling, but they have a very good riding, although you should not go for the sport suspension because that one is a little bit too stiff for our taste. And in general, the interior also offers a good overview. Not too much room on the interior though, especially on the rear bench, but still a very well usable car. You can really have a lot of fun with, you can really do a lot of things with. And if you have then the standard suspension, you'll also have both sporty and comfortable ride. But surely of all of those 4, this one is the sportiest pick in any way. That's also what BMW is characterizing. If we talk about the BMW X1, maybe that could also challenge the Audi Q3 because it's overall, a little bit better as for the room you have available than the X1. Also one of my favorite premium compact SUVs for sure. Then on the third place, I will put the Volvo XC40 because it represents a rather fresh approach. It has this Scandinavian design outside and inside. The room you have available is also one of the best packages of all Volvo models. So you don't have too much more room in the XC60, for example, just a little longer trunk. But you can already do a lot with the XC40 too. Something is a little bit complicated, for example the infotainment system software or also the gear shifting lever of the automatic gearbox, where you have to go over the neutral always and click twice basically to get into reverse or the D mode once more. And driving wise and engine wise, it is sure the least attractive of all of those 4, because the engine is quite high in consumption and also doesn't deliver the best performance. And also driving-wise, it's the least sporty of all of those 4 models. But somehow it still has character, and that makes it for sure very interesting. And the last place at the moment to me is the Mercedes GLA. It is also basically the oldest model. It is due to renewal. It will then be based on the all-new A-Class generation very soon. So at the moment the GLA is really only a crossover to me. So whereas the Audi Q3 and the Volvo XC40, they both already offer you this high seating SUV position and the feeling, the X2 and especially the GLA are more crossover, just a little bit pumped up compact car, and to me that's not really enough. So I would like to have this real SUV feeling.
However, you can also argue for the rather sportier crossover feeling for sure. But the thing I criticized most with the GLA is that it's a little bit cramped on the interior, it's a little bit outdated on the interior, and you have the least room available overall. Still, it offers you a very decent and sporty ride. So it's by no means a bad car, but we are here in the compact premium SUV segment, so the bars are set up at a very high niveau, but still we wanted to get our order in here somehow that you have a better orientation. And well, what other vehicles are there to choose from if we think outside this box here? Of course, there would be the Volkswagen SUVs, which are already premium. You can definitely say that. The T-Roc, as you know, the rather small competitor, direct competitor, which is more in the crossover way. And well, the Tiguan is surely something in between, already moves towards mid-size SUV segment. So the question is, you know, which one to compare with which one. Here to those four, probably rather the T-Roc then. And also the Seat Ateca, which sits basically between T-Roc and Tiguan. So the Seat Ateca would also be a choice to to notice if it is available in your market. But of course, we have the single reviews of all of the cars and also the other ones I mentioned now. And really looking forward to your feedback, what you take from our comparison here today. Thank you so much for tuning in.